Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Hunt, and this is Human Capital, a Goalspan podcast. On the Human Capital podcast, I interview top business thought leaders to uncover the deeply human aspect of work. Today, we're going to talk about a topic more business leaders should be paying attention to. A crisis of long-term unemployment is looming in the US, and as of this podcast recording, more than 4 million people, or 40% of the total unemployed workforce, cannot find work even after looking for 6 months or more. In many spaces, it feels like the economy is roaring back, but other than the Great Recession, this statistic has not been seen in the US in over 60 years. My guest on the show today is Loren Greiff, who not only has a deep knowledge of the LTU, or long-term unemployed, and also ageism, but also has 30 years experience in consulting, recruiting, marketing, innovative career coaching. And she founded Portfoliorocket a year and a half ago with a mission to empower creatives and marketers to love their work, to be valued, and to be well paid for it. She can speak to both business leaders and candidates about how to overcome some of the biggest challenges they face as we emerge from the pandemic. Also, Loren posts some very valuable thought leadership content on LinkedIn, where she has about 12,000 followers. Welcome, Loren.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I am so happy to be here. And the name of your podcast, Human Capital, it like shines and rings such a loud message. And I can't wait to get into it and explain how and why that is.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. We gave a lot of thought to the name, so I'm glad it resonates. And I, like I said in the intro, I'm really excited to have you on the show for multiple reasons. And I want to dive into all of those. But before we do, take me back to the beginning of your career and share with me what person or thing inspired you to get into the recruiting space. By the way, specifically for digital creatives, which is such a unique market, and then ultimately start your own business.
So thank you for that. The inspiration that got me into this was really all about creatives and marketers and giving voice and value to the transformative impact that they make today across the most innovative brands and companies. So for over 30 years, I've lived in this industry from the inside out, in the trenches, watching this breed of talent, confront their fears and frustration about how to uncover what's best and next for them, far outside of a job. How do I navigate these waters? And out of those leadership experiences came a very simple mission: to make this tough time easier, more effective, and efficient. So I designed my program first and foremost to be fun. I don't know a lot of creatives or marketers that don't like to have fun, and I think that they resist that search if it's not fun. But it also is a repeatable framework delivering consistent results. So those two things work in tandem. In that opportunity is a completely different paradigm shift for them to be found in the marketplace, rather than for them to be spending a lot of time hunting that out for themselves.
In the intro, we were talking about long-term unemployment, or LTU. And I want to spend some time with you just kicking this around, because if you look at coming off of the pandemic, the statistics are kind of mind-blowing. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, just so people know, they define long-term unemployment as being without work for 27 weeks or 6 months or longer while they're actively looking for a job. And so if you go back to the Great Recession, LTU steadily declined to a rate of 0.64%. And that was after the Great Recession, all the way up through April of 2020. So April of 2020, we're at 0.64%. But since the pandemic, the statistic has ballooned up to 2.6%. And so that's as of April 2021. So that's just to kind of give people a sense of how many people are struggling in this area. And so one of the things I'd love to hear your thoughts on is how can employers be part of the solution to bringing these long-term unemployment rates down?
I mean, this is a real hornet's nest, right? It has a lot of different elements to it. And let's face it, the ultimate solution for eradicating the stigmas around long-term unemployment is a long game. It's not going to happen overnight. And I've been, really hearing different methodologies that are holding C-suite level and throughout the company more accountable for being able to make those hires. But in the meantime, the employers are, there's a growing population at this point, at least 20 out of the 40, the Fortune 50 that are committed to this, not just because it's the right thing to do. And this is important because hiring long-term unemployed make good business sense. And that's really for three major reasons. They're well qualified. They come with tremendous life experiences. And what's interesting about this is that it's not necessarily that they are not qualified, it's that they're under accessed. So they're in many cases just removed from the process altogether. And we're going to talk about that. But the other reason why it makes good business sense is because hiring those who are long-term unemployed offers higher retention rates. They want to stay, they want to be involved, they want to be part of a reliable and diverse workforce. And there's been plethora of information about the benefits of a diverse workforce, and that does include diversity outside of some of the more traditional understandings, whether it be race or gender. So that's really important. But they're also, finally, less costly to acquire. There are a number of, it's close to 3,000 intermediaries that provide American job centers that are publicly funded and non-for-profits who are committed to helping to provide this level of access and also to be helping to provide good fits for organizations so that they are actively recruiting from that pool. So that's important. The most minimum thing that every employer should be doing is removing inappropriate filters, right? The filters in the screening procedures, asking for things like dates, last or current employment, those can automatically eliminate anyone who has, the standing of LTU. And not only is it wrong, it's illegal. So, that has to be on the employer side to really take accountability for that and to make significant strides in being able to address this population. But I also want to introduce the flip side of this, which I think is also equally important. With all that being said, and yes, it's unfortunate, it's messy, it's horrific. The stats are not, they're not promising, right? And a lot that we as job coaches or even job seekers is to really make that critical shift of applying personal responsibility, right? And that really starts with your headset, your mindset. So I address this very day one with my clients, because so much of the time, and they've said, and it's been said many times, 80% of your job search is up here between your ears, right? And so many who've been out of work for a really long time, they they are smart enough to get around to the upskilling, the classes to supplement where those goals is. They're using that downtime effectively so that they are able to talk about that as part of their overall experience. So they're seeing these opportunities as their solution out, right? Like they need a solution. They don't want to be stuck in the problem. So if they don't address it, ideally sooner rather than later, right? Even proactively, if you know that there's a gap, don't let it sit there, because it'll just become bigger. And so addressing that early on proactively is really, really important on the candidate side as well.
And it really is beneficial to continuously develop oneself anyway. And it's going to have all sorts of beneficial effects, whether it's emotional effects, building competency, making yourself more attractive to a potential company. And overall, you're going to end up in a better place, it sounds like. So
yeah, I mean,
really makes sense.
You know, they say change or die.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
And if we're not keeping up with our own relevancy within our careers, then we are susceptible. And so we want to do everything to avoid that, especially early on.
Right. But it sounds like what you're saying is that from the employer standpoint, this pool of candidates is highly qualified. They have deep life experiences that they can bring to the workplace that other candidates may not have, that bring them a level of wisdom that's going to be very worthwhile. And effectively, they're going to be very loyal. So they may help us bring turnover rates down. Is that right?
Exactly. Exactly. At this time in particular, we are seeing that there is a lot of almost like, the floodgates open. People who have been sheltering in jobs are now back out into the marketplace. There's been a lot of transition. And at the same time, companies are dying to hire. They're dying to hire. And so this, as I see it on the part of the employer, is a critical time to start, providing this audience an opportunity to showcase all that they can do.
Right. And so this next topic is sort of connected, but talk about under and overqualification, because I think some people, especially in the LTU space, they may have a long career and it might be a storied career. Maybe they've got some incredible experiences, but they continue to be overqualified for specific positions, or at least that's what they're being told. And yet on the other hand, you have the underqualification world. So what are your thoughts about how to deal with this issue?
So this is this one really gets under my skin, just so you know. Under and overqualified candidates are, for the most part, rejected at the ATS level, right? And so when there's no relationship with a candidate, they are just going by what is essentially on your resume.
And just to clarify, Loren, for lay people, ATS is the applicant tracking system, right? So basically what you're saying is that in the very initial stage, they're going to be weeded out without anyone even possibly knowing, right?
You just actually quoted the quote that I was going to quote, which is that 98% of Fortune 500 companies use applicant tracking systems, which often weed out 75% of the applications before they reach human eyes, sometimes for irrelevant reasons like the way your resume is formatted.
Wow.
So if it's that benign for resume formatting, I can assure you that other things that could be indicators that you're not qualified over or under are definitely at play. So in order to mitigate this, I'm not sure you're going to be able to avoid it, but to mitigate it, you have to actually do some heavy lifting. So before you do anything, You got to know if your skills are matching the roles, if you can drive the results that are required to excel, and even why do you want to work there? Why do you want to work at that company? The answer is not because it's a job, right? Because what ends up happening, this dynamic happens over and over again. Many job seekers, and especially those who qualify as LTU, become so desperate to run away from where they are that they don't even know where they're running to. And that is so evident to anybody who's hiring. And so
they can just see it in the interview process. Is that right? So like,
I mean, it's such obvious things like, if you're interviewing for a company and let's just pretend that they had an award-winning app and you didn't use it and you weren't able to talk about it with any kind of depth, they'd be like, like this person is not really invested. This person doesn't really, like, why should I, as an employer, hire you when you're not coming and meeting me where I need to meet you, want me to meet you, right? And so, in the recruiting world, we call this spray and pray, where you send out, it's no different than spaghetti on the wall. Somewhere, somehow, it's going to stick. So that's a waste of time, and it's demoralizing. So, with all your precious time and required energy, avoid that at all costs. But once you are crystal clear and have made that decision, yes, I want to work at that company and I know why, it's about getting in front of decision makers. So this is so vital because there is a ton of research about why referred candidates are considered the holy grail. We know that they are birds of a feather. So the likelihood of them actually staying longer at a company and performing very well is significantly higher, like 4 times as high. Yes, and we know also that when they have a referred candidate, the process of hiring them speeds up because there's an investment in this person. So that allows the rest of the team to get back to their regular duties, and also is the ability to make a strong hire so that the recruiting team can go and move over to the next one. So it's saving bandwidth across the organization, and they're also less expensive to acquire because you're not having both the actual cost of the advertising or the job posting, but you also are eliminating a lot of that man hour that is happening behind the scenes, where there are often, like Google has 3 million applications a year, and less than 2% of them actually get hired.
Yeah, just do the math. What that means is that 98% are not getting hired, right?
Right. So, it's important as a job seeker to really understand that there is an ROI, and you want to really pay attention to that. So, the biggest thing I want you to take away as far as, over and under qualified is getting to somebody who can essentially be invested in what it is that they know you can do and speak out on your behalf. And that's the key. But also just a couple other things I wanted to offer as some things to avoid if you fear that you might be overqualified is, by all means, like tailor the resume so that it is, it is clear and concise. I find that so many people don't understand that multi-page resumes will just send off a signal that you've been in the job market for a really long time, or been, out in the workforce for a really long time. So you don't want to do that. And also don't list every degree that you've ever had. You really want to make sure that you are thoughtful about thinking about it from the employer's side, because if they see that, they will jump to the assumptions or conclusions that somehow, you're going to get bored, or that your salary is far outside of their range. So, you want to leave off the dates of your education. You want to make sure that you're also putting that resume in more of a functional format rather than a chronological one. So just
less is more.
Less is more. And then finally, for either one, over or underqualified, try to get some specifics so you know how to address them, because in many cases, it might be fixable.
Got it. I'm also making the connection between what you shared about networking and how critical it is to get that referral, because that essentially can bypass the ATS problem that you described earlier, right?
Big time. Big time. I mean, referrals are the back door, right? They are the side door, the back door. And in many, many cases, I have seen, and this isn't like a dirty little secret, this is public, companies will post those jobs for legal compliance, but in many cases, they have a pre-identified candidate. So you, as the job seeker, are looking and thinking, oh, there's an open role and I'm just going to go through that. But they have either an internal candidate that they're going to move into that slot and have to open it up, or have somebody who is slotted in via a referral. So, the best investment that you can make is in your human capital. I did that intentionally.
Nice.
So that you have the compound interest year over year over year over year as your career continues.
I'd like you to speak just for a minute about the hidden job market and sort of what that is, why it's not always the best talent that is landing jobs. And this, I'm guessing, is something that you can speak to not just in the world of creatives and marketers, but in a very broad sense.
Absolutely. So the simplest definition of the hidden job market is positions that are not posted online, so you find out about it before it ever hits daylight, or yet to be posted, right? So again, it's positions that are open and available. I mean, you have startup companies and all kinds of small companies that are, moving and scaling, and from one week to another, they may not know what they need. Somebody could be out on maternity leave and never come back. Somebody could, just have left the company and you are having coffee with their best friend and find out about it. So there are all kinds of ways that you are able to access the hidden job market. But the first and foremost level is through relationships, right? So it's positions that you are not visible, that either are currently open or are coming down the pipeline, which comprises about 80% of the inventory. There's a huge, underneath, if you see an iceberg and you see just the top, all the stuff that's below the waterline, that's considered the hidden job market. So the second part of your question, where's the best talent? Why isn't the best talent always landing the job? Is primarily because even with my clients who are all masters and experts in their field, articulating their value and being able to do it so that it's heard and understood in the eyes and the ears of hiring managers is a very difficult exercise, especially knowing that you have a half an hour in your first interview, knowing that the rapport building at the beginning and the questions at the end, and that leaves you in the middle for, 2 or 3 different examples. And so you have to be able to articulate the values that matter to them. Specifically, how have you driven revenue? How have you changed a workflow? Where have you made an impact with brand awareness? So importantly to say is that the hidden job market is also, it's going to favor people who are building relationships and able to articulate the how and why of what they can do for you. Most people don't know how to do that. It's not anything that we're ever taught in school. It's not something that, that you know how to do even in the beginning. It takes practice. And it also, quite frankly, takes support. And I see this over and over again, where I have a one-on-one program and I also have a group program. And the folks in the group program are, just even by having other people say, wow, I didn't know you did that. That is so cool. I even had a client not too long ago, and he's like a incredible project manager, and he worked in the retail space. And I asked him, I said, tell me about some of the stores that you built. And he's like, no, I don't know if I want to do that. And I finally said, no, tell us. And he said, I can't believe you're asking me this, because I built these Apple stores in Barcelona, and I did this, and the whole room like erupted. They're like, what? That's amazing.
That's what people want to hear, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
well, and it's so interesting because, well, my company's in the performance management space. We deal with goals a lot, and goal setting is one of the most difficult things to do in an organization. And one of the challenges with it is actually articulating the results that are going to occur rather than the activities. And really what you're talking about is the same thing. If you're a highly skilled candidate, then speak to the results that you have produced, and it's going to make a world of difference. And if you're an employer seeking those candidates, obviously you're going to be looking for that results history from the best candidate.
Every single time. And I think that what is so critical about this is that when you are able to articulate it, it is not only a huge confidence booster, it increases your compensation exponentially, because you can see plain and clear exactly what that is. And so, the goal for networking, just so that we're on the same page with goals, is what I suggest to my clients in order to do this is very simple. 2 coffees a day. 2 coffees a day. That's 1 hour. And that is 10 a week, which is 40 new people a month, which if you multiply that by the average number of contacts that each person has, you're well over 200. You're close to 250,000 for the end of the year. Surely somebody in there is going to be able to.
It comes down to the law of numbers, really.
Yes, strategic numbers.
Yes, sure. Of course. Okay, awesome. Well, let's shift into some lightning round questions. I love these because they help us get to know you a little bit. And my first one for you is, what are you most grateful for?
Absolutely everything. Truly, absolutely everything. The life that I live, the people that are in it, the business that I am enabling others to benefit from, and the opportunity to serve. So it's a pretty long list.
It sounds like you're a deeply grateful person, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. Such an example for people. So, and Loren, tell us what your most difficult leadership lesson that you've ever learned is, if you can think of one from over your career.
I think the most difficult leadership lesson I ever learned was that as a leader, it's not always about being liked, and that it's it's really, really hard to make tough decisions and do the right thing. Can put a lot of internal conflict in within yourself. You know it's the right thing, but you may lose some faith, face, ego. All of those things can certainly get mixed up in what is best for the team and the right thing to do.
Such a good piece of advice.
Mm.
Who is one person you would interview if you could, living or not?
So I have a mad love affair with art and photographers, and I would probably want to interview Will Wegman, who is a photographer that does the Wine and Morans, because he's a brilliant painter and I love his work.
Nice. Do you have a top book recommendation for our listeners?
Yes, I have many book recommendations as well, but one that really is standing out right now was written by Susan Scott, and the topic is Fierce Conversations.
I've read that. I love that book.
Yes, and I like that book a lot because one of the phrases in there that I find so powerful is the conversation is the relationship. And I think that applies very, very appropriately to job seekers as well as anybody who is networking.
And it fits perfectly with the best leadership lesson that you've learned over your career as well. So what you were just sharing. Well, if you had to boil it down, Loren, what's the single biggest takeaway you'd like our listeners to get from this show today?
What I'd like them to walk away with is that there is so much worth and value that is available in so many ways. And if you are struggling to find it for yourself, absolutely reach out to me. If I'm not the right fit for you, I'm happy to refer you someplace else. But be in the solution, find a way, whatever that is. It may mean putting something on a credit card. It may mean sacrificing and compromising something else, but it's always going to be part of your self-respect and your dignity to be providing for your family and to be able to be a huge contributor to yourself.
And how can people find you?
Oh, absolutely. I have a second address outside of my home address, which is LinkedIn. So please feel free to find me there. I would love to connect. And also you can sign up for my newsletter at portfoliorocket.com.
And it's Loren Greiff, and it's Greiff, right?
It is. You got it.
Awesome. Loren, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff. And thank you, listeners out there in human capital land.
Thanks for listening to the show this week. We release a new episode of Human Capital on the first and third Tuesday of each month. I would really like to know what you thought of this episode. Send your comments to humancapital@goalspan.com. Human Capital is produced by Goalspan. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and please share this podcast with your colleagues, team, or friends. Thanks for being human, kind.